Welcome to Conversations with Barbara. I'm Barbara Canelopoulos, and my guest today is Ron Galibois, who is a candidate for the District Attorney's Office, the District Attorney of Cape Cod. Welcome to the program, Rob.
Barbara, thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation.
Yes. We enjoy very much having you here, and I'm sure that we have many viewers who are not aware of exactly what the responsibilities are of the district attorney. So perhaps we can begin with your explanation of that.
The district attorney, Barbara, is someone that I refer to as an impact player. The DA has been referred to at times as the conscience of the community. Mm-hmm. The district attorney gets to decide who they're going to prosecute and what charges to bring in those prosecutions. The DA also gets to choose which cases to divert or dismiss. Mm-hmm. Without question, Barbara, the district attorney is the biggest impact player in the entire criminal justice system.
Of course.
So, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an important job. It's definitely a very important job.
So, why do you want to take this on?
Well, I've been a lawyer now for 27 years. I came down this way in the mid-1990s, and my first job was right here in the district attorney's office for the Cape and the Islands. I started off as a district court prosecutor, mm-hmm. and I had the opportunity to work in all 5 courts across the Cape and both islands, Nantucket.
And this was fresh out of law school?
It was fresh out of law school. And it was a great job. I truly enjoyed it. The district attorney at the time was a gentleman by the name of Phil Rollins. He was in office for quite a while. And I had the exclusive chance to work right here in Falmouth for a year, day in, day out, at the local Falmouth District Court. And that was a tremendous experience. After about 3 years or so, they gave me the opportunity to ascend up to the Superior Court, where that's where your major felony type cases are handled. And I got to work there for about 2 years or so. So I worked in the district attorney's office as a prosecutor for a little over 5 years. After that, Barbara, I joined a local law firm right in Barnstable Village, where I focused exclusively on criminal law. And again, after 5 years, I took a leap of faith and I started my own business, my own practice, where I got to value the importance of creating a budget and operating inside of that budget.
Oh, yes.
So that was definitely a learning experience. And I've been doing that since for 27 years. I have a unique advantage in this particular race, Barbara. Over the course of 27 years, I've literally practiced in all of the courts across the Cape and the Islands, most of the courts across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I've been to about a dozen states or so at this particular point. So what I've been offering to folks, it's the breadth of that experience that gives me that unique vantage point. I've literally gotten to see district attorneys throughout the Commonwealth and the country try to transform priorities into practice in their courtrooms. So it's that particular experience that motivates me to run for district attorney here on the Cape and Islands.
So you have seen the successes elsewhere,
yes,
and issues that you thought maybe could be improved. Yeah. That's a wonderful perspective to have on the job.
It really is. I'm very fortunate.
Right, right. So what are the things that you care most about and that you would want to bring to the position if you're elected? Well,
without question, Barbara, the #1 priority for any district attorney has to be public safety. It's imperative that the DA build and maintain, that's crucial, and maintain the closest relationship with the law enforcement professionals. The police officer that stops that car in the middle of the night in the darkened road has to know that the DA's office is going to have that police officer's back. In a similar way, The detective that's on her 15th hour writing search warrant applications needs to know the DA is going to have her back. My office will be filled with professional and experienced prosecutors who will always be accessible to our law enforcement partners.
And so you'll also have a relationship with our sheriff.
Yes, yes.
Right.
The DA does work with the sheriff. The sheriff's race is open right now, as you know. There are two candidates, as far as I'm aware. Donna Buckley is the Democrat candidate, yes, and Tim Whalen is the Republican candidate. And there is a professional relationship between the DA's office and the sheriff, so it is important that there be a good working relationship there so the system runs smoothly.
But that kind of explains to me why you are very interested in having a closer relationship with communities. Mm-hmm. Explain how you want to do that, to bring your office so it won't be distant from events going on in the community.
The past several months, as I've been working on this campaign and making my way across the Cape and the islands, and I've literally been now from Main Street, Buzzards Bay, all the way through Commercial Street, Provincetown, really? And on both of islands. Kind of a constant theme that I hear about, Barbara, is a disconnect or a breakdown between the people that the district attorney's office serves and the DA's office. So to try to remedy that, I've been explaining on the very first day of my administration, I would create what's called a community engagement officer. And that person's full-time responsibility would to be in our communities every day, to keep their finger on the pulse in our neighborhoods, and report back directly to me. A few weeks ago, I announced also that we would create a community coalition. We're going to call it the DA and Us. And there'll be a chapter, Barbara, in every town throughout the entire Cape and on each island. And these coalitions will be made up of local elected officials, local officials, including certainly police officers, community activists, and the ordinary citizens. And it just provides another layer for us to try to remain connected to the people that we're serving. But we're going to do more. The DA's office also employs about 65 people, and each of those employees will commit to 4 hours of community service each month, including yours truly. So that will be a third way for our office to try to remain in touch with the communities and the neighborhoods that we serve.
That is extraordinary, it's sensational, and so important, because so often as life gets more and more complex, our representatives lose touch with the local. And that's not easy because constituents speak with various voices. So
they do.
It isn't easy to keep in touch with what's going on. This is a wonderful plan.
I appreciate that. Right. Thank you.
Yes, it's much needed. And because it's really a case that the law has it continues, it exists in a social context.
Yes, it does.
So to get away from that context is not good for anybody.
Correct. It's important that the district attorney remember why you are in that chair. Yes. And you are there to serve the people that elected you, to keep them safe.
Right.
And there's a saying, every district attorney tries to be good at prosecuting crime, but the great ones try to prevent crime. So that's where my community engagement piece comes into it.
Of course. So knowing where prevention might work.
Correct. And in that vein, if you will, because of my experience working in courtrooms across the Commonwealth, I've had an opportunity to observe two specific programs for reasons unknown to me, they have not made their way over the bridges to our communities and to the islands. And specifically, I'm talking about a mental health session. In other courtrooms in other counties throughout the Commonwealth, they have this specialized court session referred to as the mental health session. And essentially, when a team of professionals will come into the courtroom to work with the judges and the probation officers and with that defendant that has certain mental health struggles to figure out the root of the problem. Why is this person getting ensnarled in the criminal justice system? So if we can launch that type of session on the Cape and Islands, that gives us an opportunity to address the core problem for that person and reduce recidivism and prevent future criminal acts.
Of course.
In a very similar way, a second program is known as the Veteran Session. And again, Barbara, there are other courts throughout the Commonwealth that have this special Veteran Session court, and we don't have that on either the Cape or both islands. And it's something that I'm actually quite excited to try to launch here in our community. I began speaking, Barbara, back in January about these veteran sessions, and I caught the ear of the district attorney out in Western Mass in Northampton, a fantastic gentleman named David Sullivan. I need to give him some credit because he's been wonderful to me and giving me guidance. He gave me a call one day, and we met up for a coffee. He has a relative that lives here on the Cape. And after a couple of hours of talking to him about trying to launch one of these veteran sessions, he just said, Rob, you know what the special sauce is to run a successful veteran session? He said, it's the group of volunteering veterans from your local community that comes into the courtroom and works with that veteran who's facing the criminal charges to try to figure out why they're there. And veterans can speak to each other, and they have the certain same background and experiences. So that is invaluable. And it just so happens, Barbara, we have the largest concentration of veterans in our counties across the Cape and Islands than anywhere else. Really? So we have this big pool of terrific veterans that we can draw upon to work with a veteran that's struggling and is involved in the criminal justice system.
These are extraordinary ideas, good ideas. You think it's going to be difficult to see that they are put in practice?
I don't think so. I think there just needs to be some effort to work with the trial court officials and our state legislatures to convince them, hey, why not us? We're doing this in other counties throughout the Commonwealth. Why not us here on the Cape and the Islands?
Yes, it's a precedent for it, so that's good. And so that makes me think of also one of the things that you have on this handout, this brochure, is your interest in not prosecuting misdemeanors, reducing incarceration. I think this is the goal, isn't it?
When we have an opportunity to get to the core of the problem, what brings someone to the court, if that can be identified, then we have an obligation to try to treat that particular issue. We as a society and a community benefit that in the long run. So when there are occasions where someone comes in on a misdemeanor type offense that's nonviolent, I have to draw a line on matters that are violent because, as we know, we have to keep our communities safe. But for those that are nonviolent misdemeanor types offenses, I want to be able to try to take the occasion to see, okay, why is this person here? Was it truly just a bad case of judgment or a mistaken judgment? And is it something that we can address right now? And they show some good faith effort that they're never going to appear back in the criminal justice system again. So if we can identify that and they're willing to work with us through some sort of an evaluation or engaging in community service themselves, then I'm willing to work with them to try to preserve their record so they can go back to their lives.
And it certainly adds to our public safety if people are in the community having been examined. And in the case of drug addiction.
Right.
That also is, it seems to me, something that will benefit with treatment, so that we don't have, the community is made safer.
Absolutely. The opioid crisis remains in the forefront in all of our communities across the Cape and the Islands. And again, throughout the course of this campaign, I've had the opportunity to meet with various professionals across the district, including those from the Duffy Center, Gosnold. There's a new entity in town called Column Health. And those conversations have led to certain things where we try to look for where can we improve. The pandemic has certainly caused certain struggles in our recovery efforts, but so we're trying to look, how can we improve our efforts to try to work with the opioid crisis as best as we can. And one of the main issues is residential treatment. There is a lack of residential treatment, especially in the mid-Cape to lower Cape area and on both islands. And what that's led to, Barbara, is the thought of creating a focus group where you get the professionals in the field, elected officials in the area, of course, as well, and private investors, to try to convince them to launch residential treatment programs in areas that we don't presently have them. Now, traditionally, this really isn't a role for the district attorney's office, but these aren't traditional times.
Yes,
so
yes.
It's, I think, incumbent upon the next district attorney to make those efforts to try to grow residential treatment.
Yes, yeah, very good ideas. And I noticed that you have been, you have won the approval of for your candidacy from the Upper Cape Women's Coalition.
Yes,
so,
yes.
No doubt they are encouraged by your concern for women's issues. And so let's talk about some of those issues where I know that you have got some ideas about what can be done in court cases involving domestic violence.
Right. Well, first let me say, in regards to the support from the Upper Women's Cape, that was a grueling interview process. That was not easy. So I feel very fortunate to have gained their blessing.
Yes.
Now, domestic violence cases, unfortunately, they're still out there in the court systems. And more often than not, a woman is subject to the domestic violence. So it's important to try to make sure we have services in place that can keep her safe. And those services evolve out of court type of agencies, but also it's important to look around to each of our communities and support whatever efforts each of the communities on the Cape and Islands have in place to try to keep them safe.
Yes. Then, thinking about domestic violence, I know there is an issue having to do with if someone is not able to post bail and is incarcerated, that this has an effect on the woman. Is it a financial burden? Is it that someone might be incarcerated because that person is not able to come up with the money? Well,
again, keeping in mind the first priority is to keep the victim safe.
Yes.
So in certain occasions, our office would need to try to keep the person, I guess for lack of a better description, incarcerated if it's a serious enough offense where the life or safety of the victim is at issue. When there are occasions when we can make certain identifications that we can put certain conditions on the defendant in place that would keep the victim safe, then we're willing to work with the courts to try to fashion some sort of level of conditions where the person would be able to return back to their community, but still show to the courts and to our office that they're willing to live up to certain conditions while their case is still pending.
So every case is different.
Every case is certainly different. Yes.
And it must be, you want to do extensive investigation to be sure that that case is treated properly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very important to spend the time on each case, because each case involves lives. And they involve our neighbors. So it does require and deserve, quite honestly, the necessary attention.
Yeah. That's quite a challenge.
It is.
But an important one.
Yes, it is.
Right, right.
It is.
And I on your list, this jumped out at me because we have been so heartbroken over school safety and what has happened.
Oh my goodness, yes.
In Texas, it's just awful. Your thoughts about school safety?
Well,
it's promoting youth and school safety.
Promoting youth school safety. So the tragedies in Texas and beyond, we could spend several shows with all the incidents that have gone on just this past year. School safety is obviously a priority. There are certain institutions in our communities where we have to emphasize to our fellow residents, they have to be crime-free. We have to do everything we can to try to ensure that they're crime-free. And that would certainly include our schools and our churches. And we need to stay engaged with school officials as best as we can and try to provide them the resources they need to try to make identification of anyone within their environments that they see this is a person that we see might have certain struggles, and try to address it as quickly as possible so we're not looking at a Texas type of situation.
Yes, that fits into your own notion of prevention.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
And I notice also here that you have priorities as a collaborative approach to, yes, you mentioned that, working with professionals in opiate, in the case of opiate addiction, that sort of thing.
Yes.
And then we have this that I'm curious about, diversion consideration for first-time nonviolent offenders, this whole notion of diversion.
Right.
What is that all about?
So if someone comes into the court, again with the nonviolent misdemeanor type offense, if we can identify quickly that it was a mistaken judgment, as opposed to bad intent, this is not an evil person, it was a bad judgment call, it didn't involve any violence, and they have no other record, and they seem to be someone that can show us that they're not going to come back before the courts again. My office, again, will be willing to work with that person to try to preserve their record, and if they're willing to show some good faith back by contributing some community service hours, by preserving their record, Barbara, it would be just that, diverting the prosecution, and it would not involve a criminal charge appearing on their record. Sometimes when someone has a criminal charge on their record, even though it might ultimately be dismissed, the fact that the charge appears on the record might be a problem for them later on down the line when they try to get a loan for something or try to go onto a school, something of that sort. So if it's a nonviolent misdemeanor offense and it was truly a mistaken judgment and they show other things that they're not going to come before the court, we're not going to be looking to saddle them with that particular charge perhaps for the rest of their life, and can go back to their life so long as they're willing to, in good faith, demonstrate to us that they'll engage in some community service work, and we're confident that we're not going to see this person again.
Are you seeing that that particular policy has traction across the country? It
is in place in many different areas. Curious note, some district attorney's offices put an age limit on this diversion. They cap it at, I've seen 22 seems to be the magic number. I try to be a logical person. You could be someone in your 30s and make your first mistake, or 40s.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily looking to put a hard cap on the age of the person, but it is a program that does exist throughout the Commonwealth and beyond. I've seen it in other states as well, and it's just something that I want to put to use here on the Cape and Islands.
Good. Yes. Well, we're running out of time. We could talk for a long time because there's on the edge. One question. I'm curious because it's often said that our country, we imprison more people than any other country, and so these moves are toward reducing incarceration. It seems to me that anything that we can do to keep people out of prison is a goal that you might have.
Right. If we can identify why they're in the system, and it's something that we can work towards to keep them out of the system, we all benefit. Now, there's definitely going to be some occasions where we need to stand up and say, this person needs to go to jail. And I think when we do that, the judges, the courts, will give us credibility when we do that, when we say this is a person that needs to go to jail as punishment.
Yes.
But on the occasions where we can identify, be it a mental health issue, be it a drug addiction issue, that there are services available that someone can utilize to keep them out of the system, again, we're willing to try to work with them in that regard.
That makes a lot of sense, that working toward the credibility so that people will understand what the goal of the program is. Makes a lot of sense. Well, maybe you want to take just a minute to address our viewers about your candidacy.
Sure, thank you.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you for that chance. I announced my candidacy for District Attorney on January 24th on the steps of the Barnstable Superior Court. At that time, I had a handful of supporters with me, many of which were actually right here from the town of Falmouth. Since that time, this campaign has grown into a large coalition of activists, all marching together in unison to ensure public safety and justice for everybody. On November 8th of this year, we have a chance to elect a new district attorney. Experience, integrity, accountability, and engagement. Those are the 4 cornerstones for public safety. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we're ready to get to work. Thank you, Barbara, for giving me this opportunity.
Well, I thank you very much for being here and explaining what this awesome responsibility is.
It is awesome.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I want to thank viewers for watching, and to remind everyone that voting is essential in a democracy. So be sure when the November election is here that you're right at the polls voting as well. Thank you again for viewing, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Conversations with Barbara.